Hello everyone, I'm Dave Thomas, and today I am building the Estes Big Daddy mid-power model rocket. And as we do with all of these, the first thing we want is to find out whether we have all of our parts. Now there are quite a few modifications that are available to this, so you can upgrade the centering rings or the fin stock or the parachute, things like that, through third-party companies. I am going to build this as the kit is. The only major modification I'm planning on is to paper the fins, but I'm still going to use the regular stock balsa. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our instructions out of here, and that will give us our parts list. Alright, also check inside to make sure there's nothing hidden. Oh, that's good. Okay, so we have a pre-slotted body tube here, large nose cone, okay, and then we've got a small parts package here, and this contains the motor mount tube, motor mount spacer, looks like an engine block there, and also an engine spacer. Okay, clip and 3/16 inch launch lug. Okay, so we'll check over here. So it's that part, that part, that part, that part, that part, that part, and the shock cord mount is right there. Okay, and then in the other package here, alright, we have our balsa fin stock, alright, parachute and shock cord, okay, cardstock centering rings there, and some water slide decals. Okay, so it looks like we have everything. I will clear most of this away and we will get started with the build. The first step in the rocket is to build the motor mount, and so we'll need all of these parts here. Now this orange piece here is not part of the structural rocket, but is a spacer that's used if you're going to be using 70mm long motors in this, like an Estes C11 or a D12. If you're using the Estes E series, you won't need this, and if you're using composite motors, you won't need this either because they have an aft retainer ring. So for now, I'm just going to set this aside. Now, according to our instructions, the first thing we need to do is mark the spacer here, the yellow tube, at 3/16 of an inch or 5mm from the aft end. Okay, and we're going to use this as a spacer here to put the engine block in, so we'll move it up to that point. Before we do that, we're going to apply some glue to the other end of the tube here. So I'm going to mark one end as aft so that we don't get it confused later. And I'm going to use an applicator here to apply my glue. And so the glue is supposed to go 1 inch down from the forward end. So what I'll do here is just measure that and use my thumbnail as a stop. We'll put some glue on the applicator. Alright, again, make sure you're on the forward end. I'm going to stick this down the middle till my thumb hits and then just rotate that around in there. So that now we've got a ring of glue. Now we take the ring, put that in the aft end, put our spacer in here and push that in until we get to our line and immediately pull that back out so we don't end up gluing it inside. Alright, and there we've got a lot of glue up in there. You probably could have had us put the ring a little farther up. I'm going to take a dry applicator here and see if I can remove some of that excess glue there. Because if it's too thick, it could interfere with the motor. Either the motor will have a hard time going in, or it may get stuck once it's in there. All right, that's also formed a good fillet there, so that is fine the way it is. Okay, we won't need the spacer anymore. And we'll go ahead and take that out. All right, now we're going to make some marks on the motor mount itself. So we're going to take our motor mount tube here, all right, and measuring from the aft end, we need to make a few marks. So the first is going to be at 1/4 of an inch or 6 millimeters from the aft end. So that's going to be right here. All right, and another at 1 inch or 25 millimeters right here. Okay, and then another one at 3.5 inches or 8.9 centimeters. Should be right there. And then a final one at 9.8 centimeters or 3 7/8 of an inch. That's a 9.8. It's going to be right here. Okay. Then at our 3.5 inch or 8.9 centimeter mark, we're going to cut a slit here about 3 millimeters or 1/8 of an inch wide. This is where our engine clip is going to go, and that should come out right below our engine block or thrust ring there. I'm going to pop this into place. Okay, now I've actually got a little bit of a gap there, so I'm going to push my thrust ring down a little bit so it rests right upon the engine clip. Try and get a, oops, too far there. All right, try and keep the ring level once we push that into place. Okay. Now, the clip may be trying to cover up your other marks, so once you got the clip on, you might need to extend those a little bit so you can still see them. Alright, now at our 1 inch or 25 millimeter mark, we're going to add a layer of masking tape there. And this is just to keep the clip from moving about while still allowing it some flexibility there to add and remove motors. Alright, so you just need a little bit bigger. You want enough tape there that it actually wraps over on itself. Just like that. Alright, and then we're going to come over and remove our centering rings, and these should just pop out. If they're giving you a lot of resistance, you can cut off the little nubs there. Alright, pop out these pieces too. Now the ring that has the notch here, that is going to be for the aft ring, and then the one that's got the slit here is the forward ring. Okay, so that is the aft ring here will go over here, and that's going to mount at our mark there. Alright, go ahead and dry fit this first. Alright, that's a little bit snug. So what we can do is just take a little bit of sandpaper of just about any grit. And we're just going to lightly sand off those little nubs and open the diameter up just a little bit. Okay, still a little bit snug there. Something else you can do is you can take this spacer and wrap your sandpaper around it. And use that as kind of a round sanding block there. Almost had it. There we go. And you can just rotate this around a few times. Okay, and then we'll check this again. There we go. It's snug, but it'll work. Okay, so I'm going to start by backing this all the way out to the edge there. And now I'm going to add my glue. Okay, now I don't want to get glue on my clip there, so do be a little bit careful with that. Alright, we're just going to run glue right along the inside edge. Okay, and then we're going to push that forward until we reach our mark. Okay, there's the mark right there, and then just even it up all the way around. Okay, so we've got basically our own fillet here on the inside edge. I'm just going to smooth that around, but again, not get it on the clip itself. And then we'll also make a fillet here. Alright, and then over on the other end, okay, this is going to go on our other mark up here. And again, we're going to dry fit that, and it does also need a little bit of sanding. Here I sanded the ring just like I did in the aft ring here, and also pushed it into a ring of glue and back here, so we met up with our mark. And now I'm going to put a fillet on the forward edge here. Just run that around. Alright, and these thin rings tend to get a little bit out of perpendicular pretty easily. Okay, but at this point we just need to let all of this glue dry. While the glue is drying on the motor mount, we will get started on the fins. And it's best if the fins are still in the fin stock here. Now if they've fallen out during shipping, that's fine, you'll just have to do them individually. But we will start by sanding the faces here. And I'm going to use some 150 grit sandpaper to start with. And just use a sanding block, it's just made out of a piece of wood. And we're just going to sand both of these sheets front and back with the grain. Now I'm changing to some 220 grit sandpaper, and this is just going to make the surface a little smoother. Now, as I said, I'm planning on papering these fins, but if you don't want to do that, that's fine. It'll work fine. I would go up to about 320 grit though if you are going to use straight fins to get a nice smooth finish. Some people even like to go up to 400. Alright, but I'm just going to go with the 220 right now. Alright, now as I'm doing this, I can feel some of these fins just trying to come apart here. And we can go ahead and take them out now. So just use your hobby knife and cut through the little nubbins here that are left over from the cutting process. Now we're going to line them all up like this. And I'm going to go back to using 150 grit sandpaper here. I'm just going to put it on my surface. And the first thing I'm going to do is start with the root edges here and just sand those evenly. Mainly just to remove the remnants of those little cut nubs. I'm going to do that with the leading edges now. And with my tip edges. And then my trailing edges. Okay. Now the instructions call for rounding the leading edges here. You can round the trailing or taper the trailing if you want to, but I usually just round the forward edge there, the leading edge. I'm going to do that after I finish papering them though. Okay, so some people like to do it before, do the airfoiling, whatever they're going to do, and then add the paper. I like to do the paper first, then the airfoil. So I'm going to get some stuff ready here, and I'll be back with the papering. What we're going to do next is technically called paper lamination, and it's where you put a sheet of paper on each side of the fin here, and that gives it a stronger fin, especially in stress points where the grain is weakest. Okay, so normally we put the grain parallel to our leading edge because that gives it the most strength. But we can still break things here and there. And then also, this gives a nice smooth finish to the faces of the fins without using sanding sealer or wood filler or just tons and tons of sanding and priming. Okay, this is optional. If you don't want to do this, just skip ahead a little bit till we get to the mounting of the fins. Okay, and there are also two ways to do this with paper. So when I first learned to do this, it was using white glue or wood glue to adhere just regular sheet paper to the fins. And then I started experimenting with self-stick paper. And so this is labeling paper. In this case, it's a full sheet. For this rocket, you could use half-sheet ones as well. And for smaller rockets, you can even use individual labels in some cases. All right, so what we're going to do is first peel the adhesive off of this paper, or the backing off, so we expose the adhesive here. Okay, and now we're just going to line these fins up. I don't know if we can get all four on here, but we'll try. Alright, we're going to press those down really well. Now if you do want to do the glue method instead of this, check out Apogee Components website. They've got a really good tutorial on how to do the glue method. Actually, it looks like I may get all 4 of them here. Alright, then we're going to want to press these down nicely. Get good contact. And make sure you don't have any sawdust left on these. I've been blowing them off as I go. And a little more dust there. Alright, now I'm going to take another sheet and place this over the top. Okay, now here we just need to make sure that we cover everything. Alright, and the idea here is not to get a lot of bubbles. We want to smooth this out. It's okay if the paper in between adheres to itself. That's okay. Alright, and now I'm going to take this off camera and I'm going to put several heavy books on top of this to put pressure on it, and I'm going to leave it there for several hours. Now if you're doing this with the glue method, you want to do this like for half a day at least, maybe even a full day, to let that glue fully absorb and dry, and also to keep the fins from warping. Okay? If you're using the self-stick paper like this, warping is much less of a problem. I ended up leaving the books on my fins overnight, so they should be thoroughly adhered. And now I'm first going to just cut this in half between the 2 groups of fins here. You do want to be careful doing this so we don't accidentally cut a fin. Okay, and then kind of feeling this, we put these fins kind of close together. So I'm just going to cut this lightly. I'm not even necessarily going through both layers. I just want to make sure that I don't cut the fins themselves. Alright, so I've got the fins roughly cut out here. I'm going to take a quick break here, and I'm going to put a brand new blade in my hobby knife so it's nice and sharp, and then we'll come back and clean up the edges here. For the final trimming, we're going to use our nice new sharp blade here and just carefully cut through right along the edges. Okay, you don't want to necessarily do this all at once. Kind of trim down low, and then a little lower and a little lower until you reach the edges here. Okay, so there's one fin cut, and then Our next step is to seal the edges, and we're going to use some regular viscosity super glue for that. Okay, so here we're just going to run some on and let it soak into both the edge of the wood and the paper. This is going to make it a bit more rigid. And this will keep the paper from lifting up as easily. And it will also make it more sandable. Alright, now I'm not going to seal the fin tab. Yeah, got all over my fingers there. Okay, if you get it on the fin like that, it's not going to hurt anything, except that now your fingers are going to stick to everything. You can just wipe off the excess there. Now, as I was saying, for the fin tab, we don't need to seal that because we actually want the porous surfaces here. Something to be aware of is that with the added thickness of the paper, this may not go through the fin slots on the body tube as easily, and we may have to sand those out a little bit. Some alternatives you can do is, instead of placing everything on one sheet like I did, you can use smaller individual sheets and place the paper such that it never actually goes over the fin tabs. Okay, you can also score this and lift it up, but I'm just going to leave it in place so that we've got the added strength there. I'm going to do the same things now to the other 3 fins off camera. The super glue on the fins has dried, so here I'm just going to take one of them, and first of all use a little 150 grit sandpaper here, and I'm going to re-sand the edges like that. And note that it kind of raises up a little bit of a lip there, and that's okay. In a minute we'll get rid of that. Alright, over in here, this gets a little bit harder to sand. Just kind of tuck the sandpaper in there. And then for our leading edge, now we'll come back to the leading edge here in a moment when we go to round it. And then we'll get our tip edge here. And then finally the trailing edge. All right, and then from there, I'm still using the 150 to start with. I use my sanding block now and start working on the edges. So I want to round over the leading edge here. And so first I'm just knocking down the corner edges. Now with the super glue on there, this is going to be a little bit more time consuming and requires some more energy than if we had just left the balsa by itself. We just want to check the cross section as we go along to make sure we're rounding this over uniformly. center in the cross section. That's better. Alright, then for my tip edge here, I'm just going to clean it up, but I'm going to leave it square. And the same for the trailing edge. Alright, and again we're going to clean up the little bits of paper there and here. Okay, now I'm going to come to my engine mount here, and the fin tabs should mount in between the two centering rings. Alright, and I'm showing that it's not quite there. Alright, so we're going to need to trim down the fin tabs a bit. Alright, now this is trying to delaminate there. It's okay. We'll fix it when we glue it in. Okay, looks like it's going to go. Alright, now I'm going to do the same thing to the other fins off camera. And then we'll also put in the engine mount to the main body tube during this time. Now before I can mount the fins, we need to mount the motor mount. And before we do that, we need to determine a launch lug line here. So I'm just going to pick a point in between two of the fins. I'm just kind of marking this by eyeball. If you want, you can actually measure between two. And then you can put this up on a door frame or a drawer edge, angled metal, or in this case I'm using this tube marking guide that Estes makes. So here I'm just going to line up my launch lug mark there. And we're going to draw this line all the way down the body tube, as this will give us an easy sight line when we go to put the launch lug on. Okay, now when we go to put the motor mount in, I'm going to want my engine clip along that same line. So here I'm just going to test fit this. Okay, and if you can see there, as I move this, you can see the centering ring there in the fin slot. You want to have that back like this. Okay, I'm going to check our instructions to make sure. Yes. Okay, so you can see the forward centering ring here, and it's definitely down along the fin slot here. Okay, but we want our fins down in here. And so if I come back to my fin here, alright, now eventually we're going to have to do a little bit more trimming here. I'm going to bring this up just a little bit, like that. Okay, and when we go to mount this, what we'll do is file out some of the material here so that my fin fits with the paper lamination. Now if you didn't laminate your fin, just go ahead and test fit it the way it is. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and bring this back out, and we're ready to glue stuff into place. So here I'm going to use a cotton-tipped applicator and some wood glue. Okay, and I'm going to measure basically from the forward ring to the aft ring. All right, I'm going to put my thumb there. All right, and I'm just going to get a goodly amount there. I'm going to put this into my thumb hits, and then I'm going to rotate that around the inside of the body tube. Okay, I'm just going to repeat this as we go around. Alright, so you can see down in there the glue lines. Okay, now by the look of this, it's the forward centering ring's got this little slit in it, like maybe you're supposed to put a shock cord there, but it doesn't. They use a standard SD shock cord mount, so just don't worry about it. Alright, now again I'm going to line this up so that my clip is in line with my launch lug line. I'll push that forward a little bit, but not all the way into the glue yet. And now I'm going to apply some more glue just inside the edge of the body tube here. Just like that. Alright, now once more, reorienting this. Now I'm going to push that in, and now it's going through both rings of glue. Alright, until just about there. So we should just see the centering ring within the slot and just a little bit of space behind it. Okay, now I'm going to measure this again. Alright, so the idea here is that the centering ring should allow this piece to be flush here. Okay, and that looks pretty good. Okay, now on the inside edge here, we can apply some more glue. Just run that all the way around. Okay, form a nice fillet there. And we've also got this glue that didn't get pushed ahead. And I'm just going to wipe this all the way around the inside of that body tube there. That'll just give it a little bit of protection from engine exhaust. We're just going to smooth that all the way around. And now we're going to let that dry. I have all of the fins sanded, and now we're going to do some dry fits here. Now I already know that this is a little bit too thick. Okay, so instead of trying to peel the paper or sand it, I'm going to use an emery board here and just sand open the slots a little bit. Okay, that's a little better. Now I'm also going to need to sand some off of the front part of the fin tab here. And we'll try it with the emery board, but you can also just use some more sandpaper here. Okay. So that's how that one's going to go in. Now this should be pretty flush there with the back end of the body tube with the trailing edge there. So if you want to make that even better, then you're going to sand a little bit off the aft end of the fin tab here. Okay, and that gets us a little bit closer. Okay, now when this is in place to be glued, it's going to be about like that. Okay. So I'm going to continue around here doing some test fits, and I'm going to go ahead and mark these so that I get each fin for its own hole. Alright, I'll do the other 3 fins off camera and then come back. I have the slots widened and the fin tabs adjusted for all of these. And so now we're going to go ahead and mount them. Alright, here we're going to use some wood glue. You can also use white glue. I have white wood glue, so I get both. Alright, and here we're just going to put an even layer along the root edges of the fin and also the fin tab. Okay, and then we're just going to put this into the slot. Okay, now make sure that it is perpendicular. You can look at this from both ends. Smooth in any excess glue here. I'm going to let this dry for about 10 minutes and then continue with the rest of the fins off camera. All of the fins have been attached, and now I'm going to attach the launch lug. So on our launch lug line we need to make a mark at 4.5 inches. So that's going to be right here, and that's where the aft end of the launch lug will go. And here I'm going to roughen that up just a little bit here, give that launch lug a better surface to adhere. Okay, and then we're going to take our wood glue again. And this is going to attach here. And then we just need to line everything up. So the launch lug line and the body tube and the fins and the launch lug should all be parallel to each other. And that looks pretty good right there. So now we're going to let everything dry some more. While the fins are drying and the launch lug is drying, I'm going to turn my attention to the nose cone here. Now, it doesn't say in the instructions, but this feels like it's made out of polypropylene. And polypropylene is a nice strong plastic, but it does not play well with paint. So the smooth polypropylene surface does not allow paint to grip very well. Now, and the other thing here is that we've got a couple of seams on this from the molding process. Now you can do a couple of things here. You can completely ignore what I'm going to do next and just hope that your paint holds to your nose cone. Or you can sand this not only to knock down the seams here, but to give a better finish for the paint to adhere. So I'm going to take some 150 grit sandpaper here to begin with. Some people like to skip straight to the 220, but with this seam here, I'm going to start with this. And I'm just going to sand that seam area to knock it down. Alright, and it shouldn't take much. That actually did pretty much the whole job there. We'll do the same thing on this seam. Okay, now there are a few low spots in here, and usually I don't worry about those too much. If you do need to fill those in, I recommend using something like this. This is Plastic Model Contour Putty. Several brands have their versions of it, and you can just smooth that in with a finger, let it dry, and you sand it off again. Okay. This really isn't that deep, and so with a little extra sanding and then the primer on top of this, it's not going to be very noticeable. Now that I've got it knocked down, I'm switching to 220 grit sandpaper. I'm going to do the entire nose cone with this. Okay, so that smoothed things out a lot. The last thing I'm going to do is wet sand this with some 320 grit sandpaper, but I'll have to do that at the sink and off camera. Here the nose cone has been completely sanded and smooth, and what I'll do next is apply some universal bonding primer, which is specifically made to bond paint onto hard to paint surfaces like this. And then we'll put on some filling sandable primer on top of that, and then color later on beyond that. Back to our fins, our glue is dried, and so I'm going to go ahead and apply fillets here. Again, using our wood glue, and it's a good idea to have some paper towels or wipers or rags handy here to wipe off your fingers, because we're going to get really gluey. And I like to do facing fins at the same time, so we're just going to run a bead of glue here. On each side, and then just take a finger and smooth that in. Now if you want thicker fillets, it's best to do it in multiple layers rather than trying to do one big thick fillet all at once, because invariably it's either going to run or form bubbles or deform or whatever, and it's just not going to come out well. And then we'll also do the launch lug here. Alright, now we're going to let this dry horizontally so that our fillets don't run to one end or the other. So I'm just going to prop this up a bit and let everything completely dry. My fillets have dried, and we've got a little bit of gapping here and there, a few bubbles. So I'm going to put another layer of glue on for the fillets, bubbles especially right here on the launch lug. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and mount the shock cord. Okay, and they give us a shock cord mount in our little small parts package. So just quickly cut this out. Okay, and then you just take the shock cord here, get some wood glue or white glue, and I'm just going to put a line of glue here. Alright, I'm going to set this cord at an angle so that when we fold this up, it'll fold up beside itself instead of on top of itself. Alright, and now just fold the 1 into the 2, squish that down, don't get glue all over your work surface like I just did. Alright, now I'm going to fold the 2 into the 3, alright, and go ahead and squish that glue around in there. We want layers of glue and cardboard with as little air as possible. And then go ahead and bend a little bit of a curvature into it here. Alright, we're going to add some more glue. Okay, now this needs to go way down into the body tube, because it needs to clear that shoulder, and that's a big shoulder. Okay, so we're going to get this down as far as we can. Fortunately, this is a fairly wide body tube as well. Basically, I'm almost touching the motor mount in there. Alright, and so just squish that in. Let's see how we're at. Yeah, that's okay. And what I'm doing is pressing this against my hand and trying to get all the air bubbles out of it. And we want that as flat as we can get it inside there. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to let that dry, and also while it's drying I'm going to apply another layer to my fillets, but I'll do that off camera. While I'm waiting for fillets and paint to dry, I'm going to go ahead and assemble the parachute. Alright, this is a fairly large one, but it's mostly pre-assembled. So we'll just unfold this. Okay, it's a 24-inch. Alright, so find all of the loops here. Alright. Okay, so I've got all my shroud line loops here hooked over a finger. And then I'm going to grab the middle of the parachute sheet here and pull everything downward. And all of those corners should be about at the same level. Okay, if they're not, you can just rotate here and change the relative length of each shroud line until you get it even. Alright, and then while holding this, you can either tie this directly to the shock cord as shown in the instructions, which is a little bit weird. So if we look here, okay, so they're actually looping this around and tying it to the shock cord here about 1 inch from the nose cone. I have no idea why they're doing that, other than the nose cone is so big that you may not be able to easily tie it directly. Now, if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I prefer to tie my parachutes onto snap swivels, and that's what I'm going to do here. Alright, so I'm just going to take all those loops and pass those through the eyelet on the swivel side. Okay, and then regather those loops, and I'm still hanging on back here so my parachute length doesn't change, or my shroud line length doesn't change. I'm going to go ahead and check that again though. Okay, bring that back up. Alright, now I'm going to take the entire snap swivel, pass it through the loops. Alright, and now I'm just going to pull that tight. Recheck my shroud lines, which all look good. Alright, and then when you've got that where you want it, then just take a little tiny dab of glue, white glue or wood glue, and just apply a little bit to that knot. Little tiny amount. Okay, and just kind of work that into the knot itself. Alright, now, the eyelet on that nose cone is too big for this, which again is why I think they also tie this onto the shock cord because of that. What I am going to do once my nose cone is done being primed is to add just a short length of Kevlar line to that nose cone and provide a loop that I can clip this into. Because the advantage of this is I can change my chutes out really easily. As I said, this is a really big chute, and maybe on a windier day I want to change it back down to say an 18 inch. I can just unclip this, put the new one in, and put this away in storage.